Good afternoon. My name's Dave Schempf, and I have a podcast called Dave's Dugout. That's usually about softball every Monday and Thursday, but on Wednesday, I have my special podcast, and it's called The Spirit of America. And we are honoring the 250th anniversary of the United States of America this year. And so, what I've decided to do is have a podcast every Wednesday, and we discuss the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. And it's each signer has their own special story. But I have the last few episodes. This is episode number 5, by the way. I have been talking about the events leading up to the Continental Congress, the Second Continental Congress, who decided to declare independence from Great Britain. And so, therefore, we're going to talk about a few of those events, okay? Because they're very important. It involves George Washington. George Washington was appointed the general of the militia, okay? The American militia. And he took charge of that militia in Boston in 1776. So that's when he was appointed. We had the war going on prior to that, but we didn't really have a distinguished leader up until that time. So he was appointed the general, and I'm going to go into a few historic events leading up to that time. Okay, I've got somebody calling in. I'm going to disregard that. Okay. So I'm going to read this. On June, let me go back a ways. Okay, we got to back this up because that's today's event. All right. So we're going to back this up to what was going on. Sorry about this. On June 22nd, 1776, okay? From Philadelphia, John Hancock writes that Congress believes that there has been very gross misconduct in the Canadian campaign and wants Washington to oversee an inquiry on the conduct of the officials involved. Now, we went into Canada because Canada was part of Great Britain, and we basically invaded Canada to defeat them because they were from the north, obviously, and they were going to come down from the north into America, the colonies, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, and Maine. Okay, all those areas were particularly in trouble because of that, and so we were involved in the invasion of Canada, and we were being defeated. So John Hancock was trying to get George Washington to go up there and see what he could do. So the next day, June 23rd, which was yesterday in our timeline, okay, it is greatly to be feared that now this is George Washington writing to John Hancock. It is greatly to be feared that the next advices from Canada will be that our shattered, divided, and broken army. Now just think about that. I bet it was very disappointing for George Washington to talk like that in those terms. Our shattered, divided, and broken army, as you will see by the return, have been obliged to abandon the country and retreat to avoid the greater calamity that of being cut off or becoming prisoners. So we were in trouble. All right. We were in trouble because our army up north in Canada was being defeated, as you can see by this letter that George Washington wrote. Okay. Now, General Burgoyne was I'm going to bring up a picture of General Burgoyne from Great Britain. Okay, that is obviously a painting of General Burgoyne, and he was a great general. I'm not gonna say he wasn't a great general because he was. To defeat us and drive us out of Canada took some doing. Okay, so now we're going to get to today, 250 years ago, June 24th, 1776. General George Washington writes, "To this end, I must pray." He's writing. General George Washington is writing to Major General Philip Schuyler. He was the major general. That's a two-star general. Okay, he was a major general of our militia, and he writes, "To this end, I must pray your strictest attention and request that you use all the means in your power to fortify and secure every post and place of importance on the communication, to defend, to the to bid defiance to the most vigorous efforts of the enemy to penetrate our country." They're going to penetrate our country. He fears this is going to happen. Okay, so now we have to fortify different forts, and one of them was Fort Ticonderoga. Okay, we have a major battle that'll be fought at Fort Ticonderoga, and it concerns Nathan Green. Okay, so we're going to talk about that later, but that's coming. All right, so um, let me put this up here. Here's Nathaniel Green. Okay, we call him Nathan, but Nathaniel Green is going to be in charge. Here's a portrait of Nathaniel Green. He is going to be in charge of our militia at Fort Ticonderoga. Okay, so this is going to be happening, and George Washington foresees it happening because we've been driven out of Canada now, and we're in trouble. So the North now, the New York Provincial Congress warns Washington that armed, disaffected men on Nassau Island, Long Island, may aid the British. So now we're going to get it from the South, and we're going to get it from the North, directing Nathaniel Green to detach enough men, especially riflemen, to disarm and secure them. So we need to disarm and secure this. They call disaffected men on Nassau Island. Disaffected is a nice term for traitors. Okay, they're leaving our militia and they're going to become on the British Army side. All right. News from the North deepens his alarm. He now assumes Canada may be the last and urges Philip Schuyler to fortify the communications southward, Ticonderoga, Crown Point, and the routes toward Albany. Albany is in New York, upper part of New York, okay? Now it's the capital of New York. To the British connect pour into New York from the north, all right? So that is what all happened on this date in 1776. You can see the British is starting to take control, and George Washington needs help. We need more men. We need more arms. We need a way to stop the British. So now we're going to get into some more. All right. You're going to have to excuse me because obviously I don't know a lot of this by heart. I know some of it by heart, but not all of it. So I'm going to read to you some things, okay, that occurred prior to June 24th. On June 7th, Richard Henry Lee of Virginia proposes separation from Great Britain. Now, this is when it got proposed. This was in a meeting, okay? Congress postpones vote to see on his resolution for a month. So setting it aside for a month, that brings us up to near July 4th. So The Committee of Five is formed to write the Declaration of Independence. Now, I already talked about the Committee of Five. It's Thomas Jefferson, uh, Alexander Hamilton, Benjamin Franklin, and I do believe there's two other men. I can't remember them offhand, but they are in charge of writing basically the Declaration of Independence. So on July 1st, the informal vote on independence will take place, but I don't want to jump there yet, okay? That is just to let you know the timeline of what is all transpiring between that meeting on June the 7th and what is going to transpire on very soon, okay, concerning the meeting of the Second Continental Congress, all right? Now, I'm going to get to a little bit more here, more interesting facts. And again, you have to excuse my reading, but it has to be done. Okay. No, July 4th, because of the document that was adopted on July 4th, which is the Declaration of Independence. This paper, which announced the 13 colonies had separated from England and become the United States of America, has been called America's birth certificate. Okay? Now, we have to go back, like I said, back to the early 1760s and 1770s, where England taxed the 13 colonies. Now, that started the dispute. That started it all, okay? If you remember, we had the what I call the patriots dressed as Indians, Native Americans, and they boarded the ships and threw the tea overboard into the Boston Harbor. Okay, obviously this infuriated the King of England. Okay, in 1774, American leaders gathered in Philadelphia at what was called the First Continental Congress to discuss their grievances. That was 2 years prior, 1774. The troubles grew worse. In April 1775, war between the 13 colonies and England erupted at Lexington and Concord, the big battle, one of the big battles, Lexington and Concord. We talked about that in prior podcasts in Massachusetts. A month later, American leaders met again in Philadelphia. So they're meeting, but they're meeting secretly. Obviously, these delegates of the 13 colonies, they have to meet in secrecy, and they're delegates. So it's similar to our Congress today, where we have congressmen. Obviously, there's no women in delegates back then. Women weren't even allowed to vote, so we already know that. All right, so they're all men. Okay. When the Second Continental Congress opened in Philadelphia in May 1775, most Americans still hoped that peace would soon be made and that the 13 colonies would be turned to British rule. You got to remember, we had British citizens there. We had patriots. We had Americans. We had Tories, as they called them. Tories were basically the ones who started a lot of the trouble in the cities from Britain to the Americans. Okay. But the war was escalated. In the spring of 1776, growing numbers of Americans were considering independence. They had enough. And they're contacting the delegates, their so-called governors, and they would say, "Look, we've had enough. I think it's time we declare independence." So this is all starting to rouse everybody up. Everything's happening. Late spring into June, everything's happening, and it's happening quickly. Okay, we've got British soldiers that are being housed by patriots, Americans, okay, in their houses, and they're upset with this. But as the British Army and the Navy comes in, it's starting to escalate, and they're being housed, okay. But then it had become clear that the taxes weren't the only issue. Having lived for generations 3,000 miles from England, Americans had begun to feel like a separate people. They're starting to feel the freedom they're enjoying here. Okay, but freedom's starting to be taken away. On June 7th, 1776, Richard Henry Lee, a delegate from Virginia, arose in Congress and read a proposal. Now, I'm going to read that proposal verbatim. Resolved that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and made independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiances to the British Crown, and that all political connection with them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. That was what Henry Lee stood up and read. Wow. All I can say is wow. If that didn't say it back then on June 7th, nothing else did. He's stating, he's stating right there in front of the delegates that we need to declare a Declaration of Independence, and we need it soon. They weren't ready then in that Congress. They weren't ready in that meeting to do this, but it's being told to them basically by Henry Lee, we need to do this. Many of the delegates were thunderstruck by Lee's proposal. They had discussed separating from England in private, but hearing the words independent states formally presented to Congress was startling. Besides, declaring independence would be the easy part. That's true. Actually, winning it from the world's most powerful country, the world's most powerful army, the world's most powerful navy might be close to impossible. That's what they're saying to themselves. You can hear them as Richard Lee read this declaration. You can hear them. They're all whispering. They're all looking at each other, saying, "Wow, what is he doing? Can we do this? Can we vote on this? Because it's treasonous." Okay, so wanting a few weeks to ponder Richard Henry Lee's independence proposal, the congressman delayed the vote on until early July. So there's going to be a second meeting. Should the vote come out for separation from England, they realized they would need a paper explaining their action. A 5-man committee composed of John Adams of Massachusetts, Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania, Robert Livingston of New York, Roger Sherman of Connecticut, and Thomas Jefferson of Virginia was asked to produce a paper explaining why America was declaring independence. The committee was entrusted to the writing by Jefferson. Jefferson was basically the best writer probably there. And when you look at the Declaration of Independence, the actual paper, it's you can tell who the best writer is. And by the way, Thomas Jefferson was a great statesman. He could stand up and he could put everything out there that we need. Okay, from his heart. Okay, he could do this. So when he starts writing the Declaration of Independence, with a little bit of oversight from Franklin and Sherman, Livingston, and Adams overseeing all this, this is a great undertaking. Okay, the tall, red-headed Virginian. Yep, Thomas Jefferson was a redhead. So he was one of the 11% that are considered redheads. And he stood up. He's going to write the declaration in about 2 weeks in his Philadelphia lodgings. So now, since this delegation has been assigned, now he's going to take part. He's going to start writing the Declaration of Independence in his own words, okay, in his lodging. Jefferson showed the paper to Franklin and Adams, who made a few changes. For example, Franklin improved Jefferson's phrase, "We hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable." He changed the wording to, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." Okay? So that was a a big thing. What he's saying is we hold what he's going to put what Thomas Jefferson is going to write now about what is true is going to be considered now self-evident, and it's all condemnation of King George III, paragraph by paragraph by paragraph. And I will read the Declaration of Independence next week on July 1st. Okay? I will read the Declaration of Independence word by word. And you're going to be, if this doesn't move you, nothing will. Okay? But getting back, the Declaration would not only be needed if the independence measure passed, each colony had formed a wartime government that had sent delegates to Congress. If a colony had 5 delegates in Congress, 3 had to vote for independence. So you see, there's a majority vote that needs to be done. This isn't just going to occur because of these 5 men. 3 had to vote for independence for that colony to choose separation from England. 7 colonies out of 13, a majority, had to vote for independence to be proposed and approved. So 7 of the 13 colonies, that's a simple majority, but 3 delegates from each colony. So 7 times 3 is 21. We needed those 21 votes, okay? So that is where we stand back then, leading up to the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson estimated that as of June 1776, 6 colonies were not yet ready for independence. So he already knew that 6 colonies weren't ready. And I can tell you who some of them were, okay? It was Pennsylvania. It was New York, okay? 2 major big colonies, Pennsylvania, New York, I think even probably Massachusetts, I'm not sure, but or possibly Rhode Island. We're not yet ready. If one pro-independence colony changed its vote that he knew of, okay, of the 7 that he knew of, the measure would be defeated, and therefore the Continental Congress was useless. Okay, if it's defeated, you might as well not even meet. But the men who favored independence knew that having 7 or even 12 colonies vote for separation from England wouldn't be good enough. For how could a new nation survive with 1 or more colonies still loyal to England? They knew. They knew they needed all 13 colonies. The majority wasn't going to cut it. Okay? Obviously, if you got 7 colonies voting yes, 6 colonies voted no, that means those 6 colonies were going to fight against the 7. Think about that. For how could a new nation survive with 1 or more colonies still loyal to England? Unless the vote was unanimous, the colonies would wind up fighting each other. They needed unanimity. They needed unanimous consent and unanimous votes from all 13 colonies. So now you can see what's going to happen. There's going to be delegates writing probably to the ones who are not looking like they're going to vote. So it's coming, and they need unanimous votes. So there's going to be a lot of bargaining behind doors. There's going to be a lot of, as we used to call, smoke-filled rooms. But back then there was no rooms. There was one great hall, okay? And they're going to be meeting separately, and they're going to be voting. You can see what's happening here, okay? On July 1st, the day before the official vote, Congress debated the issue and took a trial vote. Now, I'm going to stop right there because we're not to July 1st yet. This is still June 24th, today, 1776. They're going to start meeting on June 28th, okay? Everything's coming together now. Everything's coming together for this June 28th meeting of the Second Continental Congress, all right? Now, We're going to be meeting in this hall. It's going to be muggy. It's hot. Philadelphia in early July is one hot city. And I do mean muggy hot. And they got to keep the windows closed. Okay? They got to keep the windows closed because they don't want people that are standing outside the hall holding the ears up and listening in on what's being said. So the windows are closed. The drapes are pulled. It's almost dark in there. So they need candlelight and they got windows above. So they got lights that way, light coming in that way. So it's kind of a dark, dingy congressional meeting they're having, okay? So this is what's going to happen starting on June 28th. June 28th, just 4 days away from now in 1776. And I'm going to stop reading there because it's coming together. Our great country is coming together. Okay? Now, let me say something from the heart. Now, if you don't like what I'm going to say, so be it. But we're becoming a country. We're going to experience the greatest country in the world. We're going to experience freedoms like you've never had anywhere else. The freedom to speak, the freedom of religion, the two biggest freedoms that our patriots, our founding fathers found was necessary. Okay? Now, we're going through some tough times right now. Okay? I fought in the Vietnam War. Did I want to go? No. Did most of the men go and women? No. They were drafted. I was drafted. But I went willingly, even though I was drafted. Did I fight for our freedoms? No. No. It was to free Asia, what was going to be Vietnam and probably Cambodia and Laos and Thailand. They were all affiliated. They were all tied together back then. But it was basically Vietnam. And we were fighting to stop communism. Communism overtaking that country. Today, we have something very similar going on. Okay? It's called socialism or socialist, democratic socialist republic or whatever you want to call it. Now, I didn't say Democratic Party. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about socialism is part of communism and is taking over this country. And I fear that it is. Will not be the same country again if it happens. Trust me. Trust me on this. Okay? You have the freedom now to speak any way you want. You can speak out for socialism. You can speak out for communism if you want. You have that freedom in this country. We have the freedom of religion. If you want to be an Islam, if you want to be Muslim, if you want to be Catholic, if you want to be Protestant, you've got the freedom to do that. If you want to be agnostic, if you want to be an atheist, you have the freedom to do that. And you also have the freedom to speak out any way you want, within reason, of course. Freedom of speech also has consequences, so you must be careful of what you say. Okay, there's hateful speech. We don't need that. We don't need that. Let's be Americans. Let's be Americans. Let's be peaceful Americans. Okay? Peaceful. Remember that. The freedoms we have in this country didn't come easily. Didn't come easily. That Revolutionary War, those great heroes that fought and died in the Revolutionary War, never to experience that America became a free country. They never experienced it. The Revolutionary War was hard fought. We fought the greatest army, the greatest navy in the world with a bunch of ragtag farmers, bankers, whoever they may have been, laid down their I mean, they basically laid their lives on the line, okay, to fight for America, to fight for independence, to fight for freedom. That's what I'm talking about. They fought for freedom. And that's where we're at today. We need to fight for freedom and for America as a republic. America is not a democracy. America is a republic. Benjamin Franklin said it well when somebody asked him after the Declaration of Independence, what have we got? He says, we have a republic if we can keep it. Need I say more? So, the 4th of July is coming. There'll be celebrations leading up to the 4th. There'll be fireworks. John Adams says, let there be fireworks. Let's celebrate America, he said. Okay? He saw it coming. So let there be fireworks. Let's enjoy the 4th of July. Let's enjoy every day leading up to the 4th of July because it's very, very close. We're just, I think, 10 days away is all we are. There'll be celebrations. There's going to be fireworks leading up to it. They don't have to be on the 4th. They can be on the 3rd. They can be on the 1st. My church is holding the fireworks on the 30th, okay? And it's going to be big. I belong to First Baptist Church of Bridgeport, and we're going to have fireworks on the 30th. So I plan on attending them. So let's enjoy this time. The 250th anniversary of America, the signing of the Declaration of Independence by 56 patriots who put their lives, their sacred honor on the line. Okay? So that's all I need to say. Have a great day, and I'll see you next week on July 1st. So,